大家下午好。
Good afternoon, members. We have attained the quorum. It is time to make a start and now call to order the House Committee meeting. Item number 1, confirmation of minutes of meeting. 2 sets of minutes have been made available. October the 12th, the first meeting, and October the 14th, the minutes of the second meeting, CB2 21 16-17 and CB2 41 16-17. As of today, I have received no proposed amendments to the minutes. So can I take the minutes as read? All right then. Thanks very much. Item 2, matters arising. Report by Chairman of her meeting with the CS. The legislative program for 2016-17 has been made available to members on the 18th of October. Vide paper CB2 20/16-17. The CS made the point that for 2016-17, the SAR government intends to table 19 pieces of 19 bills. They have to do with livelihood and environmental protection and various other issues. For the 3 bills, the Medical Registration Amendment Bill, Private Columbarium Bill, and the Fire Services Amendment Bill, the CS made the point that since the FHB will set up a 3-way discussion platform to look at the bill, it is hard to determine whether the bill to be submitted will be exactly the same as the previous one. As to the other 2, they are pretty much the same as the previous ones. The CS said that the policy bureaus will, by the time they are done with the preparation, consult the panels before getting on with the legislative work. As regards Employment Amendment Bill, since the suggestions made by members at the Bills Committee have not been tabled at the LAB for consideration, so we could not make it to the second reading debate. The bill has been incorporated into the legislative program for 2016-17. Before introducing the bill, the FHB will consult the relevant panel. So much about the 19 bills that will be introduced to the floor of this council, and also the latest regarding the 3 outstanding bills from the previous term. Let me continue. Regarding the items of the Finance Committee and its subcommittees left outstanding from the previous term, there are 9 items left over from the Finance Committee and its subcommittees, and members may consider whether they should be submitted to the panel first before submission is made to the Finance Committee and its subcommittees. There is a list of the 9 items tabled before members. So I'd like to hear whether you have any particular comments. We have new members for this term, and I understand that views were diverse in the previous term. Unless members have any comments, I would suggest that the administration refer the items to the relevant panels for consultation before being discussed at the Finance Committee. All right, item B. Further report by the Legal Service Division on LN 133 to LN 143, gazetted on October the 7th. Legal advisor, please. Madam Chair, thank you. Will members please refer to paper LS5 16-17. At the last meeting, we said that LN133 to LN143, we're going to have supplementary reports. This is about the implementation of the STCW Convention regarding the amendments to the merchant shipping seafarers ordinances. We have sought clarifications from the administration. Reply has been forthcoming. We're happy with the administration's reply, and therefore we don't have any more doubts about these 11 items. All right, and do you see the need for subcommittees for those items? All right, no members would like to have any subcommittees set up. All right, so for those for those items, the deadline for amendment is November the 9th. C, LN153 and LN154, gazetted on October the 7th. Legal advisor, please. So members, please take note that members made some requests, and the administration has given a reply to the queries, and documents have been made available. No supplement, legal advisor. All right. Do you see the need for a subcommittee for those items? No. All right. Please take note that the deadline for amendment is again November the 9th. Item number 3, business arising from previous council meetings, Legal Service Division report on subsidiary legislation, gazetted on October the 14th. Legal advisor, please. Madam Chair, thank you. Will members please refer to LS 3, 1617. There are 3 items. The first one is Human Reproductive Technology Amendment Ordinance 2016 Commencement Notice. The 3rd of January has been designated as the commencement of the legislation or the notice. This is about advertisements promoting services for selecting the sex of an embryo through reproductive technology, and there is an offence there. The second one also a commencement notice, and that is the MPF Schemes Amendment Ordinance 2016 commencement notice. The 1st of April will be appointed as the day on which this will come into operation. Approved trustees will have to provide in the governing rules of registered schemes the default investment strategy. There are 2 more. The first one is UN Sanctions Democratic Republic of the Congo Regulation 2016 and the UN Sanctions South Sudan Regulation 2016. And this is about the UN's implementation of the sanctions against Sudan and Congo. And this has gone into effect on the 14th of June. All right, members are requested to approve for the 2 pieces regarding the UN sanctions to the subcommittee on the UN sanctions. All right, then let's refer them to the subcommittee. All right, for those 2 items mentioned by the legal advisor, should we have subcommittees? Human Reproductive Technology Amendment Ordinance 2016 commencement notice, and also MPF Schemes commencement notice. All right, first one, RT Human Reproductive Technology. Do you see the need for a subcommittee? No. B, MPF Schemes Amendment Ordinance commencement notice. Mr. Holden Chow proposes a subcommittee, and Mr. Wong Kwok Kin would like to join. There will be further circulation of invitation for members to join. Just a reminder that since a subcommittee has been formed, the deadline for amendment will be extended to the 7th of December. So if this is extended, it will be 7th of December. All right, Legal Division report on subsidiary legislation and non-legislative instrument gazetted on October 21st. Legal advisor, please. Madam Chair, thank you. Will members please refer to paper LS 6, 1617. There are 4 items there and 1 non-legislative instrument. The first one is LN 159 to 161. Covering 26 items of fees and charges relating to mine, blasting, manufacture, storage, and discharge of dangerous goods. The rate of increase is between 6 to 12%, and this is basically, according to the administration, to achieve full cost recovery on a gradual basis. The other one is a commencement notice. The 3rd of January 2017 will be appointed as the day for the Judiciary 5-day week miscellaneous amendments ordinance 2016 commencement notice to be going into operation. And this is the final phase of the implementation of the 5-day week for the Judiciary. The last one is a non-legislative instrument. And this is the 6th technical memorandum for the allocation of emission allowances in respect of specific specialized licenses. And this is issued by the SEN under the APCO to replace the 5th TM. And this covers the 2 power companies and the new electricity works. There are 3 specified pollutants for which there will be special emission allowances, and they are sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and RSP. Now, this may not be subsidiary legislation, but under the APCO, there is a mechanism for LegCo to scrutinize and amend the details. And this is in line with the Cap 1 mechanism regarding subsidiary legislation for this one. All right, any need for a subcommittee for this TM, for the first 3 one? No. Five-day week for the Judiciary subcommittee? No. All right, the technical memorandum subcommittee? All right then, for those subsidiary legislation and the instrument, the deadline for amendment is November the 23rd. Item 4, further business for council meeting of November the 2nd, 2016. 2nd of November. Next Wednesday, on the 2nd of November, the meeting will start at 11 a.m. and will be suspended around 8 p.m. On the 3rd of November, it will resume at 9 a.m. to be adjourned at around 8 p.m. Item 5, business for the council meeting of November the 9th. Oath of office. On the agenda, there are 22 questions, 6 oral, and the others are written questions. Bill, first and second reading, and no notice, no government motion, members' motions. The 2 non-binding motions, Dr. Priscilla Leung's amending the fire services buildings ordinance, and Ms. Eunice Young's motion regarding promoting healthy competition and the dominant situation of the link, they will be moved on to the 9th of November. There are 36 items of subsidiary legislation The deadline for amendment is the 9th of November. If members would like to speak, please give a notice to the Secretariat no later than the 1st of November.
Item 6. Position on bills committees and subcommittees. I'd like to inform members that as at the 27th of October, Thursday, there are 4 subcommittees under the House Committee, meaning 1 on the study of subsidiary legislation, 2 on policy matters, and 1 subcommittee on other matters relating to LegCo, and also there is 1 policy subcommittee under a panel which are in motion. Item 7. Nomination and election of members for appointment to the Public Accounts Committee, Committee on Members' Interests, and Committee on Rules of Procedure. May I refer you to paper CB bracket 4, 3/16 to 17, and CB bracket 2, 3/16 to 17.
議員呢喺2016年10月14號
On the 14th of October, members agreed that according to paras 4, 5 and appendix 4 of CB bracket 4, 3 and also paras 3 and 4 of paper CB bracket 2, 3, members would follow the procedures there in order to make nominations and election of members for appointment to the PAC, CMI, and CROP. According to these procedures for nomination and election, a valid nomination must be made orally by a member, to be seconded by at least another member, and be accepted by the member nominated. At the time of nomination, members should consider making sure that the composition of the members at these committees should be balanced and be broadly representative of the membership of the Council. If the number of nominations exceeds that required for appointment, a poll shall be taken by electronic means, and members having the most votes will be returned, and members who vote should not vote for more than the required number. In case where a nominee would have been elected, but for there being 1 or more other nominees having been given the same number of votes, then there should be a separate electronic poll. If after a separate poll is held and still there is a tie so that no members have been decided, lots shall be drawn by me to determine which of them will be able to take up the remaining place. Upon completion of the elections of members, the HC will be suspended for 10 to 15 minutes to allow the elected members time to elect their respective chairman and deputy chairman according to convention from amongst themselves. And the HC will present the results of the elections to the president for appointment. So first, let us have nominations and election of members for appointment to the PAC. We need to elect 7 members to join the PAC. According to ROP 72 bracket 3, we need to elect 7 members to the PAC. Mr. Tommy Zhang. I nominate Mr. Shou Ka-fai. Mr. Shou Ka-fai, any seconder for Shou Ka-fai? Mr. Gary Chan, seconds. Mr. Shou Ka-fai. Mr. Shou Ka-fai. He has already told me that he accepts nomination. You are the nominator and you confirm that he accepts nomination. Second, Mr. James Toh. I nominate Mr. Kenneth Leung. Any seconder? Dr. K.K. Kwok, seconds. Mr. Kenneth Leung, do you accept nomination? I do, Chairman. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. I nominate Mr. Abraham Shek. Any seconder for Mr. Abraham Shek? Mr. Wong Kwok Kin, seconds. Mr. Abraham Shek. I accept nomination. Mr. Horace Chang. I nominate Mr. Stephen Ho. Any seconder? Miss Elizabeth Quat. Mr. Stephen Ho, do accept nomination? I do. Mr. Charles Mock. I nominate Miss Tanya Chan. Mr. Charles Mock nominates Tanya Chan. Any seconder? Mr. Wu Chi Wai. Miss Tanya Chan, do you accept nomination? I do, Chairman. Dr. K.K. Kwok. I nominate Mr. Lam Chok Ting. Any seconder? Ms. Tanya Chan seconds. Mr. Lam Chuk Ting. The nominator should confirm that he accepts nomination. Yes, I confirm. Thank you. Any other nominations? Mr. Holden Chow. I nominate Mr. Paul Chair. Mr. Holden Chow nominates Mr. Paul Chow. Mr. Wilson or seconds. Mr. Paul Chair, I accept nomination. Chairman. Any other nominations? There are 7 members who have been validly nominated. I'll read out the names again. They are Mr. Shilka Fai, Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Abraham Shek, Mr. Stephen Ho, Ms. Tanya Chan, Mr. Lam Chuk Ting, and Mr. Paul Chair. I will count to 3. And if I don't hear more nominations after that, nomination will close. 1, 2, 3. Nomination is closed. Since there are only 7 members who have been nominated, and since we also need to elect 7 members to the PAC, I declare all 7 members nominated are elected and they will join the PAC. Congratulations. Next, we need to nominate and elect 7 members to the Committee on Members' Interest. According to ROP 73(2), the HC needs to nominate and elect 7 members to the Committee on Members' Interest. I'd like to ask for nominations, please. Mr. Chen Chen-ying, I nominate Mr. Yu Si-wing. Mr. Ronick Chan nominates Mr. Yu Si-wing. Mr. Stephen Ho, are you seconding? Yes. Mr. Yu Si-wing, do you accept nomination? I do, Chairman. Mr. Kenneth Leung, I nominate Ms. Claudia Mo. Mr. Kenneth Leung nominates Ms. Claudia Mo. Any seconder? Mr. Alvin Yeung seconds. Ms. Claudia Mo, do you accept nomination? I do. Number 3, Mr. Kenneth Lau. Mr. Kenneth Lau, you nominate Ms. Priscilla Leung. Any seconder? Mr. Abraham Shek seconds. Ms. Priscilla Leung, do you accept nomination? I do. Mr. Chen Kim-po, I nominate Mr. Martin Liao. Mr. Chen Kim-po nominates Mr. Martin Liao. Any seconder? Mr. Horace Chung seconds. Mr. Martin Liao, do you accept nomination? I do. Any other nominations? Mr. James To, I nominate Mr. Lam Chuk Ting. Any seconder? Dr. Helena Wong. Mr. Lam Chuk Ting, do you accept nomination? I do, Chairman. Any other nominations? Mr. Holden Chow. I nominate Ms. Elizabeth Quat. Any seconder? Mr. Gary Chen seconds. Ms. Elizabeth Quat, do you accept nomination? I do. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Mr. Wu Chi-wai, I nominate Dr. Joseph Lee. Any seconder? Mr. Eddie Chu seconds. Dr. Joseph Lee, is he here? Sorry, yes, you are here. I accept nomination. There are 7 members who have been nominated. Do I hear more nominations? Any more nominations from members? Any other nominations? And I will again count to 3. If you want to nominate other members, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. There are 7 validly nominated members. They are Yu Si-wing, Claudia Mo, Priscilla Leung, Martin Liao, Lam Chuk Ting, Elizabeth Quat, and Joseph Lee. We have 7 valid nominations, and we also need 7 members to join the Committee on Members' Interests. And I declare these 7 nominated members elected ipso facto, and they are now members of the Committee on Members' Interests. Congratulations. Item C, we need to return 12 members to join the Committee on Rules of Procedure. According to ROP 74 bracket 2, the HC needs to nominate and elect 12 members to join the Committee on Rules Procedure. May I invite nominations? Mr. Wong Kwok Kin. I nominate Mr. Kwok Wai Keung. Mr. Michael Look seconds. Mr. Kwok Wai Keung, do you accept nomination? I do, Chairman. Mr. Jeremy Tam, I nominate Ms. Tanya Chan. Any seconder? Mr. Kenneth Leung seconds. Ms. Tanya Chan, do you accept nomination? I do, please. Mr. Wilson Orr, I nominate Mr. Gary Chan. Any seconder? Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Mr. Gary Chan, do you accept nomination? I do. Mr. Lau Kwok Fen, I nominate Mr. Horace Cheung. Any seconder? Dr. Lo Wai Kwok seconds. Mr. Horace Cheung, do you accept nomination? I do. Any other nominations? Ms. Tanya Chan? No. Chairman, I'd like to withdraw my acceptance. So you do not accept nomination. That is correct. Thank you. Ms. Tanya Chan does not accept nomination. There are now 3 nominations. Mr. Lam Chek Ting, I nominate Mr. James To. Mr. Wu Chi Wai seconds. Mr. James To, do you accept nomination? I do. Any other nominations? Mr. Jeffrey Lam. I nominate Ms. Priscilla Leung. Any seconder? Mr. Abraham Shek seconds. Ms. Priscilla Leung, do you accept nomination? I do. Ms. Tanya Chan, I nominate Mr. Alvin Young. Any seconder? Mr. Wu Chi Wai, you second. Yes. Mr. Alvin Young accepts nomination. Mr. Horace Cheung, I nominate Mr. Michael Tian. Any seconder? Mr. Wilson Orr seconds. Mr. Michael Tian, do you accept nomination? I do. Mr. Alvin Young, I nominate Mr. Dennis Kwok. Ms. Tanya Chen, you second. Yes. Mr. Dennis Kwok, do you accept nomination? I do. Any other nominations? Mr. Ronik Chan, I nominate Mr. Paul Chair. Any seconder? Mr. Gary Chan seconds. Mr. Paul Chair, I accept nomination. Mr. Shu Ka-fai, I nominate Mr. Tommy Zheng. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong seconds. Mr. Tommy Zheng, do you accept nomination? Yes, I do. Any other nominations? Mr. Ted Hui, I nominate Mr. Kenneth Leung. Any seconder? Ms. Tanya Chan. Ms. Kenneth Leung, do you accept nomination? I do. There are 11 now who have been validly nominated. Mr. Kenneth Leung, I nominate Mr. Ray Chan. Any seconder? Ms. Tanya Chan seconds. Mr. Ray Chan, do you accept nomination? I do. Okay, we have now 12 valid nominations. Any other nominations? And like what I did for the other 2 elections, I will count to 3. If you want to make nominations, please raise your hand, because after I have counted to 3, the nomination process will end. Mr. Gary Chan, you'd like to make a nomination? I'd like to nominate Mr. Junius Ho. Mr. Gary Chan nominates Mr. Junius Ho. Any seconder? Mr. Wong Ting Kwong seconds. Mr. Junius Ho? Mr. Junius Ho? Do you accept nomination? I do. There are now 13 valid nominations. Nominations have been made and seconded. I will count to 3 to see if there are more nominations. I will count to 3 now. If you want to make a nomination, it is the time to do it now. 1, 2, 3. The nomination process is closed, and there are these valid nominations. I believe you can see the names on the screen. They are Kwok Wai Keung, Gary Chan, Horace Cheung, James To, Priscilla Leung, Alvin Young, Michael Tian, Dennis Kwok, Paul Chair, Tommy Chung, Kenneth Leung, Chen Chi-chun, and Junius Ho. We have 13 valid nominations, and we need to elect 12. Since there are no more nominations and there are 13 valid nominations, since the number of nominations exceeds 12, members need to use the electronic voting system to vote. Members, please, you can vote for most 12 members. If you have already voted for 12 members, and if you touch screen to vote for yet another member, the electronic system will send you a reminder message to say that you have already voted for the right number of candidates. If there are no questions, we will now take the vote.
我再提一提大家。
Just a reminder once again that members are supposed to choose no more than 12 candidates. We have only 12 seats, so no more than 12.
冇話要咁冇嘅，係啦，最多12位。
No more than 12. I'm sure you're familiar with the voting system. Please check your votes. The chosen members will be turning green, and there will be a tick against them. Mr. Mao Fung Kwok, is this a secret ballot? Is it going to be a secret ballot? Well, I'm sure people behind me can see what's happening. Well, at the last House Committee meeting, we have a paper made available to members. This is a secret ballot. This is introduced having regard to the situation in the last term. So please check your votes. Members that have been chosen will turn green with a tick against them. Do you need more time? Do you need more time to get on with it? Please give your indication, Mr. Kenneth Leung and Mr. Charles Mock. Do you need more time? If nobody indicates, Dr. Priscilla Leung, you need more time. Right? Allow you more time. 12 members can be chosen.
使㗎啦，呢個係咪唔使聲㗎啦？係咪啊？嗱，我哋只係需。
All you need to do is to vote for the 12 members that you prefer. You just tick them and they turn into green, and that effectively would represent a vote. All right? This is the first time we use this system, and I hope that you would get a hang of it. And please make sure that you vote no more than 12 members. Do you need more time? If so, please indicate to me. By count of 3, I bring this to a close. 1, 2, 3. That's the end of the voting. Please, Clerk, will you read out the candidates? Mr. Kwok Wai Keung, 36. Mr. Chan Hak Kan, 37. Ms. Horace Chung, 36. Mr. James Doe, 55. Dr. Priscilla Leung, 37. Mr. Alvin Young, 55. Mr. Michael Ten, 37. Mr. Dennis Kwok, 55. Mr. Paul Chair, 37. Mr. Tommy Jong, 36. Mr. Kenneth Leung, 55. Mr. Raymond Chen, 20. Mr. Junius Ho, 36. Right, the 12 members with the highest number of votes will be joining the crop, and they are Mr. Kwok Wai Keung, Mr. Gary Chen, Mr. Horace Cheung, Mr. James Toh, Dr. Priscilla Leung, Mr. Alvin Young, Mr. Michael Tin, Mr. Dennis Kwok, Mr. Paul J., Mr. Tommy Joe, Mr. Kenneth Leung, and Dr. Junius Ho. A total of 12 members who have attracted the highest number of votes. Since there are members who are members of more than one committees, I'll suspend the meeting for some time for members to work out the chairmanship and vice chairmanship, and they will make the nomination at the following venues. For the PAC, 2A, room 2A is ready. Committee on Members' Interests, conference room 2B, and also Committee on Rules of Procedure, conference room 4. We're going to break for 15 minutes for members to work out the chairmanship and the vice chairmanship of these committees. Please come back on time. Thank you.